Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Mike Norris, and we're here to talk about debt settlement. It is an alternative to bankruptcy that's useful for many folks, many small businesses. I've done an awful lot of work in the debt area in all of these subparts and like to compare and contrast and help people understand what might be right for them in an individual situation. Of course, if you have questions that we don't answer today, I'm happy to answer your further questions in a quick phone call as best I can. As you may or may not know, my name is Mike Norris. I'm your host. I've practiced law for 33 years in Indiana and Colorado, and I really love teaching. I was, in a former life, so to speak, a full-time professor at the University of Colorado. I believe that knowledge is power, and the more we know about our financial affairs and how to deal with them, the more equipped we are to lead productive lives. This material, because I'm an attorney, has to be classified as advertising material, and so that brief caution is given to you. Obviously, I'm someone who is giving you this information with his own self-interest in mind to some extent. The purpose of this video is to discuss how debt settlement works here in Indiana. Frankly, it works in a very similar fashion all across the country, but I'm licensed to practice law here in Indiana, so we like to focus on the local concerns. We're going to discuss the pitfalls and traps of which one should be aware when they're involved in debt settlement. And I think the first thing we need to look at is, what is debt settlement? Simply using cash to pay off debt at a discount, finding a way to get together a few nickels so you don't have to pay, as they say, the slow dime. The fast nickel is, for most of us, preferable to the slow dime, because the slow dime, if you look at the way interest rates compound daily and monthly, creates a very large financial burden on all of us. Of course, we need to have funds available when a debt settlement can be done. That can be considered a drawback. On the other hand, if we think about it and think hard enough, we can often come up with the funds that are needed. Often we find in debt settlement issues we are dealing with a third-party collector or an attorney. It's not always the original creditor who is involved. And it is true that sometimes debt is bought and sold. It may be a debt buyer who now holds the debt and needs to be dealt with. By law, you should be reassured all third parties must deal with your attorney. If you use an attorney for debt settlement, it's his job to talk to these third parties, not your job. Many times the harassment and the phone calls become overwhelming. This is where having a good attorney licensed in the state where you live can be very useful. Now, we should bear in mind that the process of debt settlement often takes 6 months or longer. It is not something that happens in 20 minutes or 3 days. So a little bit of patience is required in those issues. Of course, like everything in life, there are some pitfalls to debt settlement. Tax consequences, particularly the issuance of a little piece of paper called a 1099-C, often requires the person who has settled debt to recognize income when that debt is not paid back to its full extent. This is something to always be aware of in debt settlement issues. And because you are not paying on debt for some period of time as an inducement to the creditor to take a lesser sum, the debt usually goes up before it goes down. This is one of the reasons, frankly, a competent attorney is required. Lawsuits are often involved in debt settlement issues. You need to get some good legal advice on how to handle those sorts of things. There is short-term credit report damage, of course, as there is in a bankruptcy or consumer credit counseling or any situation where the debt is not paid according to its exact terms. So this should be considered. Lawsuits, as I've already mentioned, can occur. We should not discount that they will occur, and we need to have a strategy for dealing with that. Again, good, competent legal counsel is the advice that I would give to you. What advantage over bankruptcy does debt settlement have? Well, first of all, it's better for the credit report. Bankruptcy, along with consumer credit counseling, are the worst things that can happen to a credit report. The goal, instead of a stretched out Chapter 13 or a payment plan that doesn't work in consumer credit counseling. The goal is to get this thing over and done with as quickly as possible. Frankly, the longer it takes to get financial issues settled, the worse it is for the credit report. Debt settlement done quickly is a great advantage, and is a Chapter 7 bankruptcy a great advantage over a Chapter 13 bankruptcy or consumer credit counseling. Of course, if you're comparing and contrasting to bankruptcy, debt settlement does not have court hearings. For many of us, the idea of going to court is a little bit troubling. There are no court hearings generally in debt settlement. Even if lawsuits are started, the goal, of course, becomes to get the settlements done without court hearings. When we have to go to court, there are rules on how you can use your money. Both Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 bankruptcies have restrictions on how money can be used either before the case is filed or for a Chapter 13 after the case is filed. A debt settlement may be cheaper than a Chapter 13 payment plan. I have explained those things on my website, MikeNorrisLaw.com. If you'd like to consult with the website, it does have some writings as to how to compare and contrast the relative merit of debt settlement versus Chapter 13. Why use a local attorney in a debt settlement? The obvious reason is the lawsuits. You can also have a local office for consulting with the attorney. We're many times uncomfortable in these legal matters and want to sit down and look our counsel straight in the eye. The unfortunate thing that occurs with the debt settlements with the California firms is there's nobody to talk to, and often phone calls are not returned. A personal relationship, of course, can be of value. An attorney who is local maintains an escrow account generally supervised by the Supreme Court of that state. Indiana certainly supervises all escrow accounts for Indiana attorneys. Your money is therefore safe with them. But the main issue, I think, for most of us is we just worry a lot. I really don't think you should worry about debt issues. You should work hard to solve them. You should get good, solid legal advice. You should get the information today if you're worried today. For my particular case, Mike@MikeNorrisLaw.com is my email address. You can consult with me by simply sending me an email. I'm happy to get back with you and give you the best advice I can. My blog on MikeNorrisLaw.com is another useful source of information on the debt settlement issues. I have put out other YouTube videos in an attempt to help consumers understand these things. Consult with those. They are a good source of information. And frankly, any attorney, I'm going to say, who puts out a video on legal matters, by and large, is going to be very much trustworthy. Those who are not attorneys that are putting out videos and blogs on legal matters, it's really hard to tell whether or not the information is accurate, and I would give you that caution. But if you're having these kinds of problems, please remember, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. In your particular case, whatever the financial issues are, it's probably best to start gathering information today and stop worrying. You have, of course, our phone number there at the bottom if you want to call and get answers to some quick questions. We're happy to steer you in the right direction. This is Mike Norris. I hope this video has been informative and useful to you. And now I'm signing off. Have a great day.